this is Roger, thanks for dropping by. Kitchen time again. Well, this is going to be difficult. There's going to be some blooms on the floor, I suspect, but we've already had this out of the pot when it arrived, and it doesn't look good. It doesn't look any better today either. The problem I've got here is that on this type of Oncidium that has the very fine root system, the good healthy roots that are quite new are white, preferably with green growing tips, and these are brownish, but in amongst them are some that look reasonable here down the bottom. These are live roots here, so I'm starting in the middle to get the media out because it will fall through the bottom. And it's a mixture of some sort of bark in there, although I think again it's that coconut stuff rather than actual bark. It's very soft, very crumbly, and smells of mushrooms. So it's just the usual thing. The plant has been in the pot too long. Should have been repotted a while ago. But nonetheless, there are roots to work with. And the beauty of this plant is it's an incredibly strong, healthy plant. So it will have stacks of reserves which should keep it going after its root disturbance. See here, you've got white roots here. These are newer roots, whereas like this section here is older roots. What's happened is this plant was put in a pot a while ago, and if you look round here, these roots are actually okay. These roots are not. So it is a bit of a mixture here. It's not all bad news. And this is another one where the majority of this will come off under the tap. And the other thing I want to do when I do repot it is I want to get it a little bit higher in the pot. There's a reason for that. The sheaths on this are quite dense and quite strong, and they're capable of holding water, and that gives you water around the base of the plant, which is not ideal. But I've got roots to work with. I've got more than I expected, and I do have a solid mass at the base of the plant. I'm still trying to work out what it actually is, when in fact it is just the base of the plant, so it's not a big deal. And I think this is the first orchid I've repotted for a very, very long time that hasn't got a sphagnum plug buried in the middle with, you know, completely rotted, full of dead roots. It's not there. This is the true base of the plant. So this is looking a lot better than I thought it was going to look. It's a branching root system, and quite a bit of it is still intact. I'm going to try not to take too many of the roots off. I'm going to leave an awful lot on. Work on that next time I repot it, when it will be even stronger, because it will have had a chance to get into some decent media and generate a large new root system. This is the bit of the plant that's it's just solid. This is unfortunately where the new growths are. So potentially there could be some new roots in under here, but at the moment the media doesn't want to let go. Yeah, we're getting there. There's a little bit of tearing going on. That will be some roots detaching. But I need to be able to get at the base of these new growths and get all the old media away from that area, because this is where the new roots are going to come on this plant. Got a new growth here out of that pseudo bulb and 3 brand new growths. This is where the roots are going to come. And at the moment it's just a solid mass. looks like what's happened is the previous set of bulbs pushed their roots out to the edge of the pot and then just became that solid mass, and then the new growths have tried to push up in the gap, not very successfully. But yeah, I may just have to cut some of these and just get into here, but we'll try it under the tap first. Can't think why that is solid, but it is. It's just a solid mass. I can't even get my finger down through it, and I think it's just a solid mass of roots, but it does contain some old media. Okay, I'm going to get this under the tap now, but what's come out of it is just crumbly. It was coconut husk and bark, I suspect, or something fibrous. It has broken down. It has got that mushroomy smell, and it's just falling apart. So this plant is better off out of it than left in it. And this business of, oh, I need to wait till the blooms are finished, well, if that's 2 or 3 months down the line, because there's still a lot of buds, there's a spike here hasn't even opened yet. You know, that's another 2 or 3 months with the roots dying off. So I tend to go for the plant. The success of the plant is what the future blooms will be. And if I lose some of the current ones, which I doubt if I will, what I'm going to do with these spikes is try and untangle them, because it looks like they've been bent inwards for packaging. Now by trying to tease these out, I'll probably lose some blooms, but what I'm hoping to do is separate spikes out like this one. This has only just started to open, so I've still got all these buds to come, and it would be nice if they hung out towards the outside of the plant. But once they tangle up like this, they're very difficult to untangle without losing some buds and blooms. It is possible. You may sacrifice the odd 1 or 2, but then you get a nice spike like that hanging outwards. Another spike here just starting. So there's plenty more to come on this plant. Not to worry. Plenty more. Right, we'll get that under the tap, give it a clean up. I'll be back. Okay, I'll get to the plant in a minute, but first of all I want to get some media mixed up. Now, looking at the very, very fine root system, most Oncidium types do okay in a medium bark, maybe with some small bark, but it depends on the size of the roots really. And the root system on this plant is incredibly fine. Almost reminiscent of a Restrepia, a very, very fine root system. Well, that type of root system does best in a very fine media. You've got big chunky roots on a plant, the chances are it's going to do better with a chunky media. It's not always across the board, but it's a generalisation. But I've put some larger bark in the bottom of a wide, shallow pot. Yeah? Looking at that root system, it's very, very solid around the base of the plant, but it doesn't go down a lot. So it looks like it's a flat, shallow rooting type of plant, which will lend itself to that. And what I want to do is underpot it. And if I go to the next size pot down, I will end up with a deep pot for a start. So it's going in this shallow pot, and it's going to fit quite snug. And that way, when the roots get going, they will fill the pot. Yeah? And then if that happens quite quickly, which looking at the vigour of the plant may well do by the end of the next growing season, then it can be potted on knowing that it's in some decent media. So any media that stays behind won't matter. I'm also, because it's a very fine root system, going to go a little bit heavy on the moss, just for now. Because I've got a feeling that a lot of these, what I thought were old dead roots, are actually not old dead roots at all. They may well have still got life in them. And being a branching root system, the roots could shoot out anywhere. But I'm more concerned about I was worried that those new growths needed some room to put their new roots out. Well, having tried to wash the media out, they've already put their new roots out. That's what the solid mass of roots is around the base of that area. It is the new roots. They just don't look like new roots because they've gone into poor quality media that's breaking down. And yeah, that therein lies the problem. But because it's a solid mass of roots, I've managed to get most of the media out, which we'll have a look at in a minute. And the little bit of media that's still there won't matter. Not in the volume of new media that the roots will have to get into. So leaving a little bit of the old stuff in there is not the end of the world. But the root system really does look like the plant's a bit of a drinker. So looking it up as well, the problem is, because of that naming issue, the fact that the plant's been incorrectly named for about 180 years and are not mucking about, the plant that was originally described and where it came from is not this plant. So the chances are the culture wasn't actually specified very well either, along the grounds that it's the wrong plant. And now we've established what the plant actually is, I'm not sure anybody's sort of redone the words to go with it. But nonetheless, it's an Oncidium type, and looking at where it comes from, it probably would prefer to stay a little bit cooler than some of the other Oncidiums. But that will remain to be seen. I think that's enough moss actually. As I said, this is a mix of small bark and large bark, so there's some very fine media in here with some moss, which will suit a fine root system. But just to make sure there's some air in round there and that it has a chance to dry off and not stay soggy, there's some larger pieces as well, which will allow the air to stay there. Now that looks like an awful lot of media. Let's see how much we're going to use in that size pot. Because if you look at that, it looks like there's twice what I need. We'll see. And another thing, let's just get that out of the way so that doesn't go in the pot. Let's get the plant back now. I didn't have enough room for everything, so I've got to put to one side. Okay, now we look at this area here where the new growths are. These are the new roots, and there is still the odd little bit of media in there, but I don't want to mank these roots up too much. And it's not a bad root system at all. Not bad at all. So this is a previous new growth. Those are the roots that were pushed out. Only that long, yeah, and it was in quite a deep pot. Some of the roots are quite long, but in the main, they're the old ones in the middle of the plant. I'm not actually cutting roots. I have pulled some of the really old ones off that are obviously dead, but I've left most of the roots on. These are good roots. So are these, and definitely so are those. You can see the difference. And then when you start getting round here, these are the older ones that are not so good. But there's a new growth there, and that's round the back of the plant. So this plant looks like it's grown out in all directions. So let's hope we can keep that going. Okay, right. First thing I want to do is get some media in the bottom of the pot. I don't want any roots sitting on nothing. And then I need to judge how much media in the bottom of the pot, because I don't want this plant too high in the pot. Otherwise, when I water it, all the media falls off the sides. And I'm going to give it a little twist. It's easier to twist the pot. The reason? That will pull the roots away from the side of the pot, which means when they grow, they've still got media to get into rather than being literally up against the side of the pot. Now, no air gaps on this type of root system. When you get your big chunky root systems, the reason they're like that is because they're used to having air, access to air, like cattleyas and things like that. They need that air. Fine root system like this probably buries itself into the moss and the roots of the other plants on whatever it's growing on, which would probably be a branch or a You usually find these type of plants do not grow on tree trunks. Very rare to see a plant with this type of root system because those roots would not hold it onto the tree. So they tend to grow on the tops of branches. They sit on the branch and the roots go down into whatever else is growing on that branch. Mosses, other plants, bromeliads, ferns, things like that. And their roots just tangle in amongst all the others. And that's what holds them in place. A root system like this would not hold that plant on a tree trunk. So it wouldn't grow that way. And you can hear it squeaking. Why is that? Because this media is getting really, really jammed in. It's that type of root system. But I want to try and keep it away from the very base of the plant if I can. The base of the plant did show signs of being a little bit wet. Now that could well have been just because the media was breaking down. So every time it was watered, the media around the base of the plant was just staying wet too long. And not having a chance to dry out properly. Oh. A bit of pressure going on here, but I'm just going round a little bit at a time now, just a sort of quarter turn. And I still haven't got this plant to stop moving, so it's going to go in even harder. And every time you do that, you get room for some more. But I want this plant pretty secure. I don't want it wobbling around if possible. And all the new growth area is here. Now those bulbs are going to expand to this sort of size, so they're going to push out. Where do you think the next lot of new growths are going to be? They're going to be in this bit. So they've got room. So I've even planned for like another year's worth of growth in this pot. But the trouble is, if I tried to go to a bigger pot than this, it would end up being at least twice as deep. And then you end up with media with no roots in, and it stays wet. And you get, what do we get? Soggy bottom. What don't we want? Soggy bottom. Some serious pressure going on here. You wouldn't normally see me plant an orchid like this. If this was a cattleya, I would have just gently put the media into all the gaps between the roots, give the pot a tap and left it at that. And the media would just settle in on its own, the roots would grab hold of it and lock it all in place. But with a very fine root system like this, those roots have got to touch something. If they're going to branch and going to grow on, in some cases, they've got to be in contact. So, I think that'll do. If I put much more media in, every time I water it, it's all going to flow out over the top. So I think that'll do. It's quite secure. The true test of how secure your orchid is to pick the orchid up and see if the pot stays there. Well, most of the time it will, but what happens when it doesn't? When your pot falls off and all your media falls off, you've got to start again. So I don't do that. I just give it a gentle move and it's firm. So I've done it. That's good enough. Next, I can see an air gap there. So I'm going to try and just go down with my fingers and remove it. I'm not sure I'm going to get to that one. It's right down the bottom of the pot. Oh, that's better than it was. Any more? I think it was just that one. I think everything else is nice and solid now. No air gaps. Yep, that's good. Now it's going to need a hell of a watering. Lots of water now. Give it a good soak. And then it probably won't need watering for some time. Even though the new Orchiata bark does dry incredibly fast, it's just where it's so hard, it's not really drying fast. What's actually happening is it's not getting properly wet. That's what's really going on. But there's a very strange thing here. There's a tiny little pseudo bulb there, totally immature, and it's actually pushed out a spike, and it's trying to push out another one. But that's actually got a spike on it. That has got a spike on it. It just goes to show this plant just wants to bloom, which is good. And that really is not much more than that came off. So what I thought was going to be a lousy root system turned out to be a lot better than I thought. And now what I'm going to try and do is just try and untangle some of these spikes while I've actually got it under my nose. And I'm looking to see if any of these spikes can actually come off. Yeah, that one's going to come off. Where's my skizzers? What I want to do is try and reduce the load on the plant. And any large spikes that have mostly bloomed, like that one, I'm just going to take them off. Whereas ones like this, I'll leave them. These are still future blooms. And what about you? What are you up to? There's a nice one. Yeah, that's all buds. You sort of bend that round this way so we can see the blooms. What else have we got here? That's quite a nice spike. Lots of branches. And there's a separate spike here that's virtually all buds. I think this large one, this is one that's been dropping blooms all over the floor in the grow room, so I think we'll have that one. We'll let that one go. I know you might think this is harsh. It's not going to do the plant any harm. And everywhere you look, there's more spikes to come. It's not like we're never going to see the blooms again. What else have we got then? That's another huge spike there. Most of those are open as well. What's going on down the base there? Are these separate spikes or branches? No, they're actually branches on the same spike, and these branches have still yet to bloom. So what I'm going to do is just take the top off of that one. We'll leave the branches to open up their blooms. Right, that leaves this mess round here. Well, these are two separate spikes here. If I move that one over there, and then this one is, oh actually it's two. You see what I mean? The little buds and the little blooms just get very, very tangled up. Including with the ones I've cut off. I'm going to take that low one off. That's quite a large one, but I'm going to take that one off, and that's probably all I'm going to do now. What about this big one here? Yeah, it's going to clutter up those two. I'm going to take that one off as well. Got plenty more buds to come, and it'll just ease the load on the plant while the new roots get going and some of these spikes will push on. And you have to bear in mind, a plant this big with this many older pseudobulbs has a shed load of reserves in it. Yeah? So even if it had hardly any roots at all, it would survive long enough to regenerate a new root system on the reserves already in these big fat pseudobulbs. These would take a while to degenerate and start to desiccate, and in the meantime it's going to be pushing new roots out. I just want to ease its load a bit by taking some of those spikes. So we've still got plenty of buds to come. Actually that one has lost a lot of its blooms on the end of there, and then there's still some buds farther back. I'll do the same with that one. I'll take the end off because most of those blooms have gone. Right, there we go then. It's a tidier looking plant now. I've still got plenty of buds, so there's still plenty of blooms to come, and there's still enough blooms left on there to get the fragrance, which once it got out in the light yesterday afternoon in the grow room, it's powerful fragrance. Some people don't do too well with really powerful fragrance. Well, if you're one of those that have got a sensitive nose and it gives you headaches and things, this might not be the plant for you. The fragrance is very strong, and it's different to Twinkle. It's not the same, even though it's one of the parents of Twinkle. But the Twinkles have obviously got something else in there that may well have been fragrant. I haven't looked it up. I don't plan on doing it today. But this is the pure species fragrance that we're getting here. It's very strong, it's very heavy, and it's very sweet. It is a vanilla-y type of scent, but it is powerful. So if you're one of those that suffers with the old headaches from strong fragrances, that might not be the best plant for you. Unless you've got a greenhouse 100 foot by 20 feet, where it can spread out. But in a confined space, this is a powerful fragrance. So that's that one done. A better result than I was expecting, a much better root system than I was expecting, and a good, strong, healthy plant with enough room for one set of growths round here, should it decide to put any out in that direction, but plenty of room over here for the latest set of new growths which are just pushing on now. And if these 3 bulbs are going to get as big as that, they're going to be out round here. There's another new growth here just starting on that one. That's got plenty of room. And in theory, even once they've got to full size, there's still room for another set. So bearing in mind that's not an annual growth, I suspect that these growths mature and bloom in about 9 to 10 months. Yeah. So it's going to be like a year and a half when we start seeing the second lot. So this will be the first lot of new growths. The next lot looking like this within probably 16 to 18 months, possibly. Anyway, job done. See you next time. Bye for now. Oh, I forgot to say, that huge amount is in the pot. That's all that's left. Yeah. And I didn't want to stop and mix some more. That wasn't a bad guess. There's an awful lot of media got in there. It was needed. Very compact, tightly crammed in root system. Ideal for a fine root system like that.